Okay, welcome back to Woodshop Wednesdays, and today is actually Thursday, and I can't read my watch, the 30th, but I'm starting the videoing process for the next video that will come out because I have a little time to work on the pick back up working on the snare drum, which is over here. If you recall, I got the tiger maple, I'd call it curly maple, tiger maple. The reason I call it tiger is because it's sort of stripish. Tiger maple shell, tiger maple hoops. And so now what I'm going to do is mark and drill and install the lugs anyway. I don't have all the hardware, but I'm going to go ahead and do that part of it today. And then once the rest of the hardware, the strainer and snare wires and stuff like that come, I can finish in another video on that. So here we go. And I've got my little helper out here today. He's getting into things, just doing what puppies do, chewing on everything they get their paws on. So, Toto. Hey, pup. Hey. Yeah, you. Okay. Okay, this little jig right here is going to allow me to mark exactly where the lugs need to go. And it's got a key up here. The green lines are 6 lug, red are 8 lug, and 10, or blue is 10 lug. This is going to be an 8 lug shell configuration. And I chose to do that because it's a deeper shell. I'm probably going to end with wood hoops. I'm probably going to tend to stay in the medium to medium high range, maybe even low on this drum. I've got others that are a shorter diameter or shorter dimension depth that I would tend to want to tune up higher. So I don't generally tune up real high with wood hoops, so I went with 8 lug. If I were gonna put die cast on this, I would have gone with 10 lug because I would be planning on tuning higher. Anyway, so I'm gonna use this jig. I'm gonna get this marked. I won't bore you with those details. And then I'll be back. Okay, now that they're all marked, you can see that S there, that's going to be where the strainer goes. That's a lug. That's a lug. That's where the badge will go in the center. Lug here, lug. That is where the butt end plate will go from the strainer. Look at that curl. Lug, this is where the vent will go, and so forth. So now that I've got that mark, I'm going to use this little rig here, little jig, that I can draw a straight line by squaring up with the mark like that. And I can put the mark up there, then I'll run the tape and mark a full solid line. So here we go. Because these are wood hoops and I've countersunk so that the collar of the head sits up inside, I have to take that into consideration when it comes to where to place the lug, because otherwise I might place the lug too close to the top. And so in doing that, I'm just going to eyeball where I think it should be, the center of it that is, and then I'll take a measurement. So I measured just over 2 inches, so I'm going to set my little jig here for just over 2 inches. And that way I'll get the same amount of space on either side of the shell. You're going to get these lugs installed. Got the first one on there. Had to make a hardware run because I made this shell a little bit thicker than I normally do, so I had to get some screws that were longer. So now I've got those. I'll put a lock washer, flat washer. Okay, well, today is June 6th, and it's been a little while since I came out and worked on this thing a little bit more. But I'm waiting for some additional hardware. I got the strainer in and the butt. I've got my badge, which I already had that. But I'm waiting for correct length tension rods because I used the wider profile hoops. I had to space the lugs a little further away from the hoop than I normally would. And consequently, I needed to get longer tension rods. I had some in stock from before with that. I didn't have the ones I needed. So they should come today. So what I'm doing here now is I'm creating a snare bed. And I do that manually, actually, with I have a jig that I made that works pretty well for it, but I could have it done before I even get the thing set up. So I end up usually doing it by hand. With a random orbit sander. So what I do is I draw a line right in the center of where that strainer is in the butt plate, and then I use 100 grit paper and I feather, or not feather, but I ease this edge down. You gotta have about, I usually go for about an eighth, no, a little bit more than that, maybe 3/16 of an inch of a bed, so that when the snare is pulled down against the bottom head, they have a means of tightening against on the outer ends. Otherwise, it would just buzz and it wouldn't be fully seated. So anyhow, you'll notice that I did a rabbited edge around here on the snare bed side. And let me get a close-up of that, and I'll explain why. If you can see that, yeah, rabbited edge there. It's about maybe 3/16 of an inch, the profile anyway. And let me show you the bit that I used to do that. And that's this one right here. And the reason I did it is because there is, or if there is one thing about stave design drums that are kind of a negative, I guess you'd say, is that the end grain of the drum is on the outer edges, and it's solid wood. Solid wood has to move and breathe, okay? So it is very humid out here. I mean, probably, I would say 85% humidity, and it's hot. So what ends up happening is the wood will actually take on moisture through the end grain, and it'll expand slightly. So what happens is it can expand such that the drum head won't even hardly go on, and that's obviously a problem. So that happened to this drum. It doesn't happen all the time. It depends on the wood and how stable it is, but I've had to do this before, and so it's not a big deal. I bought that bit specifically for it. So all I did is I rabbited an edge enough to where, because this was a real snug fit, I couldn't hardly get the head on there. Well, naturally, you're not going to be able to tune it if you can't get it on there. So rabbited about a 1/16 of an inch around the entire circumference, and thereby giving me, you know, if you do a diameter thing, that's an 1/8 of an inch of leeway, and that's perfect. And I also didn't make it any deeper into the shell, or, you know, along the profile of the shell than it needed to be for the drum head to sit down there nicely, and the drum hoop to still hide it, because I don't want to see that. And as you can see, you can't see what I did there. So it's a method that I came up with years ago when I was doing this, and it's not really, it's not objectionable to me as long as it doesn't show. And that will allow me to always have the correct diameter. Now, in the winter time, when things tend to shrink up a little bit, what would I say, expand, contract, then the outer diameter of the shell would be actually a little less, or right where it's supposed to be. It would be about where it's supposed to be. So, because this was where it's supposed to be when I got done turning it, but it was still cool outside, not as much humidity and all that kind of fun stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling. So this will not pose a problem when the shell contracts, because it's just going to go to the diameter, which is slightly less than it is right now, and that won't have any real bearing on it might affect the tuning a little bit, but it won't affect, you know, the functionality of the shell. So anyway, what I'm doing now is I just now eased this down a bit to create a snare bed, and I'm just finishing it by hand. And again, the deepest part of the snare bed is going to be right in the center, and then it's going to kind of feather out to nothing on either edge about where the lugs are. So that's what I'm doing here. Once I finish that up, what else do I need to do? Oh, I have to drill the holes in the bottom side hoop for the snare strings to come through, and I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, I think I've got this where it needs to be. If you notice, right here, let's see if I can get it, there it is. See the gap that's there? It's more in the center, and then it feathers out on the edges. And like I said, that's probably about 3/16 of an inch-ish. Same thing on the butt side. And you can see that. There it is. Because see, you don't have that gap anywhere else. It's only for the snare strainer and butt. So you have you can see the gap in there. Well, can't focus. There it is. All right, so the snare bed's done. Now, what I'm gonna do that's very important, again, this is end grain right here. So I'm gonna sand this now that this edge is done. I'm going to create a little bit of a round over on the edge. This bearing edge is very critical to the sound of the drum. So if you want the drum more tight, well, not tight, more of a sharp attack, then you would leave this a sharp, fairly sharp bearing edge. If you wanted a little warmer, rounder tone, then you start rounding it over. And that allows more of the drum shell to make contact with the head, which produces more of the sound of the wood, which I like. So I'm gonna kind of strike a balance between them. Here we go. Okay, now that I have the snare beds done and the edges, you know, the bearing edge the way I want it, I sanded the inside lightly where all that end grain is exposed, and to try to help slow down the process of taking on moisture, that's where it's taking it in, I put a coat of shellac, several coats actually, and this will sink into the pores. And so I want to do this carefully, not to drip any on the shell. All right, well, today is June 8th, and the long-awaited day has come. This snare drum project is finally complete. I had to delay posting Woodshop Wednesdays because I was waiting for hardware to arrive. Today is Saturday. I couldn't wait to get it put together, so I went ahead and did it instead of waiting for Wednesday of next week. And in the words of the Tubes, she's a beauty. So, at least in my opinion. In fact, I think out of all the snare drums I've made, this is probably definitely one of my favorite, if not my favorite, as far as aesthetics. I'll have to see what it sounds like when I get it behind a drum set. Big shout out to a great friend of mine I've known for many, many years, a buddy of mine I was in the Navy with, Maury, because he gave me the idea to use the black nickel on the maple. And man, it really makes things pop, to me anyway. So thanks, Maury. And anyhow, so Tiger Maple 7x14 snare drum, matching hoops, and let's just get a. Oh yeah, and the strainer that I used on this is one that I used most often when I was building drums with Artisan Drum Works, and that's this Trick Percussion. They're made in the United States. It's a cool strainer, very bulletproof. It has 3 detents for snare tensioning, and so that's nice. Let's see, what else? Well, let's just have a listen to, the snare wires. These are Pure Sound wires. They're also made in the United States, and there are 16 strands separated by this middle section here, which is supposed to alleviate some of the buzzing associated with other instruments, and it also spreads out the snare drum, you know, the snare sound. So let's have a quick listen to it. Sounds like a snare drum to me. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next Woodshop Wednesdays.